Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hi, Diana. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're enjoying this chilly morning. How are you doing, Lisa?
Good. It is chilly.
We'll just give everyone a couple more minutes to join. Okay, so since it's 9:30, I know that people are going to keep trickling in, but maybe I can start talking through the agenda. Thank you for joining us, those of you who are here promptly at 9:30. I'm sorry if this is too early of a time for you. I know that we bumped up the distribution and access timing a little bit as we're trying to make the schedule work for everybody for the both committees. But welcome, I am Annika Lefebvre. I am the Resilience Program Coordinator with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. And this is the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council's Distribution and Access Committee, which meets monthly. And so today we are going to be continuing a conversation from last month about addressing grocery retail and healthy food priority areas and talking through strategies for the council to attract brick and mortar grocery retailers into low access areas. So we have a few subject matter experts here with us today, which I am excited to introduce shortly. But we can start by turning it over. I'm not sure if LaMonica has been able to join us yet, but we can turn it over to co-chair Lisa Lackenmeyer to give us a welcome if she's up for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with Annika that this is just really exciting. We have some really great subject matter experts on the topic, and I think it'll help generate some robust discussions in the future on this topic of, retail, healthy retail, food access in areas. And so I'm really excited to hear the different speakers today. So thank you to Annika also for all of her work to help bring them on. So thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Lisa. And we're going to do a quick roll call next, as usual. So for our voting members, I know that we have Lisa here. Beth Brewster said she could not make it. Do we have Delegate Charkoudian? Karen Fedor, I saw. Karen will be sitting in for the Department of Agriculture.
I'm here, thanks.
Hi, Karen. Anne-Marie Hart Bookbinder.
Here, good morning.
Good morning. Joe Liu.
Yes.
Nancy Nunn.
Good morning.
Good morning. Do we have Leah Paley here?
Angel Woodall's here. Leah is off today, so I am filling in for her. Good morning. Morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Do we have Mary Salins here? Teresa Stahl. Diana Taylor, I saw. And we have Matt Capodanno here for Ann Wallerstedt, I believe. Okay, thank you, everyone. I just wanted to make some quick announcements, and I'm going to start by putting a new team member on the spot. We have an Emerson Fellow who's joined the Maryland Office of Resilience for the next several months. She'll be with us through the end of March. Her name is Piper Kohlenberger, and she has been with us for about 2 weeks now. Piper, do you want to say a quick hello?
As Annika said, I'm an Emerson Fellow. I just graduated from Cornell with like a degree in ag sci, and I'm super excited to get to meet you all.
Thanks, Piper. Okay, and just some upcoming meetings. For next month, we have both committees meeting at the same times as today on November 20th. And then the full council is going to meet on December 11th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., but we'll have an in-person option for the appointed members of the council. So stay tuned for that, please. And with that, we'll just kick off our discussion. So as I said previously, we're going to be talking through grocery retail and healthy food priority areas, or food deserts as they're commonly referred to. And so this is a continuation of a conversation that we had last month. And the goal for this month is not so much to have presentations from our subject matter experts, but rather to have more of like a working conversation with, we want to hear from the committee members and the participants of this meeting on what are some tangible next steps or like creative solutions that you can think of, taking into consideration the presentations from last month, and also any information that can be provided by our subject matter experts today. So with that, I was going to do a quick introduction for each of our guests so that we can get to know who's here. So Ricky Travers, are you on the phone?
I am here.
Hi, Ricky. So Ricky is the owner of Simmons Center Market in Cambridge, Maryland. And he is a great person to talk to about independent grocery retail. We're so excited to have him here. Ricky, I'm going to come back to you in a minute to tell us a little bit more about your store, if that's okay.
Okay. Yep.
All right. And then we have Maura Shea here with the Maryland Department of Health. She is the vendor and compliance chief for the WIC program. Maura, do we have you here?
I'm here.
Hi, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thanks.
And Gina Platanino from the Food Research and Action Center, I believe, is joining us as well. Gina, I see that you're here too. Good morning. And Gina is the interim SNAP director. Okay, so I wanted to kick off the discussion. We have some questions lined up for our guests to help get the conversation underway, but we really want to see some engagement from our committee members too, and look to you all for any additional next steps that you can think of. So Ricky, as I said, I'm coming back to you. I was wondering if you could provide just a little overview of Simmons Center Market, like a description of your store's business model, your offerings, what your customer base is like, and we can go from there.
Sure, no problem. Well, Simmons Center Market was started in 1937 by my grandfather. It is an truly an old-fashioned grocery store. And if you would like more than a verbal picture, if you look us up on Facebook, there's a lot of pictures on there and things like that talking about the store itself. We have been in operation for 88 years. And like I said, we are an old-fashioned grocery store, so we are a full-service store. We have a full array, about 7,000 SKUs of produce, fresh produce, local produce, fresh meats, local meats. We have our own cattle that are raised for us, our beef, and we break it down. We have a full line of the baked goods. We have bacon house some, and we also have the frozen and canned items, and of course the cleaning supplies and things that go with it. So we are definitely a blast from the past. We do run 3 different divisions in this business. We run a retail operation. We also run a wholesale operation. We have contracts with the local school system to supply them with produce. We also supply them with government packaged products, like smaller packages what the kids eat in school. It's the individual, it's the federal food and vegetable program. And we also service a lot of restaurants with our local meat and produce. And we also have a gift and garden center alongside the store. So it's quite a lot happening.
Great. Thank you so much. And so, as I mentioned to you when I spoke with you a few weeks ago, a big reason we wanted to talk to you is we wanted to hear from you, like what your perspective is on barriers for independent grocery stores in Maryland, in terms of like opening new locations, expanding existing locations, or staying open, especially in those low access areas. I'm curious if you can provide that perspective.
Sure. As far as running a grocery store, it's probably as hard right now as I've ever seen it. I've been in the business all of my life, and I'm 69 years old. I grew up here. I took over management back in the 70s. And right now, with the cost of labor, with the cost of utilities, and then the cost of goods, and then fighting to get goods, it's been an extremely hard time to be in business. I understand some of these smaller guys, they're running tighter with less labor, I'm sure, and they're trying to do more packaged goods. Our store is driven on our freshness and doing everything that everybody else doesn't do. That was kind of a slogan of my grandfather. You do what the bigger guys don't do, and you do it right, and you'll survive. But right now, with minimums on buying products, with the cost, like I said, the cost of electric going up, the cost of equipment going up. I mean, when you go to a Dunkin' Donuts right now, they're paying $20 an hour for the person to walk in the door. C stores or standard grocery stores, that's a little tough, especially in a family-run operation, to think that you're going to pay just Joe off the street $20, because that pushes everybody else up. So it's a struggle, and I understand. Like I said, smaller businesses, we do supply some stuff to some of the smaller businesses in the community, like a wholesale side, and a lot of them are struggling right now. I'm seeing it harder to get money from them when it comes time for bills due and things like that. But I don't know what the incentive would be unless, there would be some huge incentives as far as, cost. If you're doing this and you're in a food desert, similar to what I am, I think I've been classified as a food desert, to make some true impacts of reducing the total cost of operation.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. So I'm gonna keep going with questions for our other guests, but committee members, please feel free to raise your hands and jump in at any moment. Maura, I have one for you. So earlier this year, you actually were a huge help for the council in providing additional information for our recommendation on healthy food priority areas and the WIC program. And so you shared a little bit about how the stocking requirements work and like participation from corner and convenience stores works in Maryland. I was wondering if you can describe more about what MDH does to coordinate with smaller retailers and like maybe talk through some of the barriers you emailed about earlier this year about participation from these vendors, and also like what feedback you've received from WIC clients as well.
Great. Good afternoon, or well, actually morning. Sorry. I feel like I'm in the afternoon. I'm already ready. We have a couple of areas that have some priority areas more in the west, I think. The mountains pose an issue in Western Maryland. Garrett County, per se, only has like 7 vendors for that whole county. We've looked into authorizing stores across state lines to allow them to more options like West Virginia. We're also working with and trying to get Walmart on in West Virginia to allow that area to benefit those participants, because WIC does allow states WIC program to authorize in other states. Participants can only use their benefits in Maryland, but if there's authorized stores across lines and they're aware, they could use their benefits there. Baltimore City it's kind of morphed. I think I've shared this earlier on. It's morphed into different beast in a way. We found that participants aren't necessarily going to any of the smaller stores in the city. They're maximizing their benefits at the larger grocery stores. We're seeing that some of the smaller businesses are dwindling down in the redemption and in the redemptions. And they are complaining that they're not getting the WIC participants. But again, the WIC participants can shop wherever they want, and they are choosing to branch out and go to those larger stores so they can maximize all their benefits at one time, and that includes WIC and SNAP and TANF and anything else that they get, and in one shopping trip, because for some it could be that they're getting a ride to the grocery store, and with the smaller stores, we're finding that they're only picking up small amounts of things. They're certainly not redeeming their full benefit package at one time at these smaller grocery stores. And there has been some struggles with keeping the products on the shelves fresh in these smaller stores. The federal guidelines require that we monitor these stores. We do investigations. We do just undercover buys and routine monitoring, where they're not aware that we're coming in. And we just come in, we look at the store, we make sure that they have the minimum stocking requirements. We offer guidance, like how can we help? What materials that we have to help them, like shelf price or shelf tags. They are required to have the shelf prices on there, and guidance on where they can place the shelf prices, on the product on the shelf, what's more useful for them. Again, as the other gentleman said, more shelf stable stuff, which isn't always attractive to some of the participants. Sometimes they want those fresh strawberries or fresh blueberries or bananas, and some of the smaller stores struggle with carrying those. And if the participants aren't coming in on a regular basis, then they're wasting a lot of food. So we work with them on ways they can maximize, purchase more of what the participants are buying. If they're not buying as much milk, maybe keeping just the minimum stock, or if they're buying a lot of milk and eggs and not necessarily anything else, buy more of that, right? Looking at your buying trends and your sales and kind of pinpointing what would be best. A lot of the smaller stores do get their product from Be Green, and Be Green is a smaller distributor. It's not necessarily the cheapest distributor, but Be Green and Company does a wonderful job, and we work with them as well, and giving them shelf tags so that the grocery stores or the small stores know what to look for, what's WIC approved, so that they're moving in the right direction when they're doing their shopping for the store. So yeah, those are some of the challenges and what we try to do to help the vendors. But we are out there, and we do have a requirement by the federal guidelines to do all of this stuff. And as I don't know what you all discussed earlier, but we do have minimum required stock. For the smaller stores, it's a lot smaller than what it is required for the bigger stores. Obviously, like your chains, your like Giant, your Walmart, your Safeways and stuff. And that's just, we have the 2 different tiers. 3 or less registers, or 4 or more. So that does help. And that once we implemented that, but we do have to have some kind of stocking requirements because, you know, after all, we're here to support the vendors and we love them. But our priority is our participants. So if the participants are going to make their way to a store, we want to make sure that they're able to use their benefits. And that is the purpose of the minimum stock. So if they're going to go to a store with no minimum required stock and they don't have any WIC products, what's the point of them schlepping all the way over there to shop? So every state across every WIC state does have minimum required stocking, and some of them vary. So depending on how their state operates or what works best for their state.
Thank you, Maura. And
You're
one
welcome.
follow-up for you. Do you think that like the WIC program could be a potentially helpful resource for increasing the availability of healthy food in those low access areas? Like, is there more potential for growth? What do you think?
I don't know, honestly, because it seems that with the sales decreasing in the cities, the small stores, you know, I would like to see like larger grocery stores come onto the program. But we do have a lot of like international stores. We have kosher stores. You know, we've reached out to other additional kosher stores to get them on the program. So that way that our kosher clients aren't coming all the way from, you know, PG County all the way up to Baltimore. To our other kosher stores. There is one in the Baltimore City area, Baltimore County, kind of on that line. And they do a great job as well. But in the past, we've had other programs work with Healthy Corner stores, like do a Healthy Corner store project. And it's great in the initial onset of implementing this and following up with the vendors, but after it's over, it kind of just falls to pieces. And honestly, they're only going to retain in their store, and I'm sure Simmons can agree, they're only going to carry in their store what's selling. So if certain products aren't selling, then they're not going to carry it, regardless of what we or Healthy Corner Store program or anything like that tries to do.
Well, I do agree with
Be
that.
negative, Nelly.
I do agree with that in the facts that the SNAP program has a pretty basic stocking program that you have to have when they come in to have a store brought on the system. Now, I personally in my facility do not carry WIC. I have probably my fault. I haven't looked into WIC like I should. So if you could send me some information out on that, I would take a look at that. But I do know if it's to do, last I remember with WIC, you had to deal with a lot of baby formulas and things like that. And they become very expensive, and the shelf life on those is much more limited than most stuff. So that's kind of why we have stayed away from the baby formula end of it. Just as you said, because there's so many different kinds of baby formula in there. And if if one doesn't sell, then you're out big money when it doesn't move on the rack.
Yeah, the vendors do struggle with the formula. When we reduced the minimum stock, we did leave off soy, and so smaller stores are only required to carry the primary contract formula, and we severely reduced that minimum stock burden on smaller stores because they also don't have the shelf space, right?
Yep.
And they're not a Giant or a Safeway, so we used to have you have to stock 27, so now it's drastically reduced.
Karen, did you have a question? I'm sorry, Maura, I didn't want to interrupt
Oh, that's
you.
okay. I just realized Karen's on the call. Karen at MDA, we work really closely together, and I'm sure that's what she's going to mention with FNMP. And so we love working with them in the fruit and vegetables for WIC. I forgot what I was going to say, but go ahead, Karen.
Thanks, Mara. I know, actually, it's really fascinating to listen to this part of what you do at Health, just because we do work so closely with FMNP. So the question I had for you regarding grocery retail was, do you guys track sales like what we do, and what people are buying, what participants are buying in the grocery store?
We have data at our fingertips, but we do track. We are required by the federal government to have not to exceed prices. It's a cost containment measure. Every WIC state is required to have it. So there's a maximum price per item that we have to have. So in a sense, we do track that trend. So say for instance, if like, with the eggs and the issue with them, once they increase, we increase that because we know the impact on the vendors and we don't want to hurt them. And we never want to hurt the vendors with like payment. And we understand, and I understand Simmons, like the freight charges and all of that have drastically increased. I've heard that on the Eastern Shore, my Eastern Shore stores, like the smaller stores out there, and they have almost the same freight charges. I don't even know how we would be able to fix the freight charge issue, but they do have that. But Karen, we do have a lot of information with that, and we do get requests every now and again for data. There's certain information we can't give,
Right.
But yeah. And I do look, especially at the smaller stores, just kind of see like what the redemptions are looking like, because we can pull some of those reports. They're ad hoc, so sometimes it takes a lot of time, and you can go down a rabbit hole. So we do have to track, what the trending prices are and adjust them every month. So the shelf price, those NTEs get adjusted every month, just to account for inflation.
Right. No, that's understandable.
And it's like the requested price of the vendor. So if a vendor peer group, so vendors are put together in like stores in size. So like the little stores are put together with only the little stores. So they're not, held against the standard for a higher, lower price in a large chain store. So when they are constantly increasing their requested price on milk because it keeps going up and up and up, that's going to adjust. It's not going to stay the same. And we do it monthly. And some states don't do it monthly, but we do it monthly, just to make sure that we're helping out the vendor. We don't want to penalize anybody by any means.
Right. That's a lot of work on your end.
It is. Our food costs are pretty hefty. I don't think people realize how much, WIC spends in food.
Right. Definitely. Thank you. I had no more questions.
So here's one for Gina to bring her into the mix. So Gina, you are our SNAP expert. And something that DHS has mentioned regarding recent federal changes with SNAP was predicted impacts to independent and small scale stores in Maryland. Can you talk a little bit about that? And are there any targeted approaches that FRAC is working on to help mitigate some of those harms? Yeah, say more about that, please.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that discussion because I'm privileged enough to be in these discussions in other spaces, and I'm glad that it's ongoing. So there's a couple of things going on. Yes, the federal changes that have happened, and what we need to understand about the SNAP program is that it is an economic driver, right? We think about, yes, beneficiaries are benefiting, but then that money goes from the federal government to the state. The individuals then utilize it at the local markets, like our friend who just spoke, right? Those local markets hire individuals because they need to work the stores, which means what? Wages, local wages. Those stores pay income tax, which means federal and state tax, but also local taxes. And when we saw in the end of the pandemic, when the emergency allotments ended, we saw a huge dip in grocery sales. And as the other speaker said, it's a really fragile time for groceries at this moment, right? When we think of retail, we think of various places, but especially smaller grocers are really struggling because they operate at such a small margin. And you have here sort of priority areas and so on, but USDA defines some of those areas as high need, low access, where there's few and very remote areas. And a lot of those where there is high need, meaning that there's a lot of SNAP recipients. And if 20% of your profit, or in some stores, 50% of your profit depends on SNAP, when individuals who are currently eligible as states or your state begins to implement in some of the changes of HR1, all of a sudden cut off, that's a huge drop in profit, right? Because individuals won't have those resources. And if those local groceries are not able to keep their doors open, it doesn't only impact SNAP beneficiaries, it also impacts your local community. It impacts because now people have to travel further, but it also means that your municipality, your county no longer has that tax revenue because the store has closed. The National Grocers Association, who like as an association of like smaller grocers, not all of them are part of that, estimates that there will be a 6% cut in terms of profits. And they do a very good job. And I'll put the link here. We talked about it too as part of FRAG, of showing how each of the provisions of the bill, like for example, cutting, only allowing certain individuals who are, have a disability or over 60 to be able to claim some like a different exemption to utilities, right? That means everyone else, they're gonna see a decrease. So you might think, it's $10, $20 of difference. Well, those $10, $20 means that they're not gonna be able to shop for food, because that's what SNAP does. Like, means less money spent for food, right? The other cuts, if you're 18 to 64 and don't meet any of the exemptions from time limits, that means that around the winter, individuals are going to stores and in your municipality is going to see like, why did all of a sudden 10% of my customers dropped off? Because there is no SNAP, and people are in SNAP because they need it. While it's supposed to be the supplemental nutrition program, in reality, it is the main source of food for many individuals. And while many of those individuals then may have to resort on top of that to food banks and food pantries, that's not money coming in to grocers and so on. So that's what we're expecting. And what FRAC is doing is really talking about the economic impact that really has been lost from this narrative, to really let local communities know in your municipalities, you should talk to your retailers and understand what percentage of SNAP recipients are there in terms of EBT sales, and what can be done and how it could be helped as individuals are being cut off. There are some states that have a certain percentage of humanitarian-based, lawfully present individuals, those who receive refugee and asylum, right? Those are going to be cut off overnight, right? So that's something that we're going to see. And retailers who understand like some of these cuts may understand, okay, why did this family all of a sudden stop spending money? But others are going to be caught off guard and not understanding why the market has shifted, because people are just not going to have those resources. So we're really working hard on creating that economic analysis, but also tying it with what happens when individuals lose SNAP. So just flagging for all, like for some individuals, it's the difference between paying for their car insurance, paying for their car, paying for transportation, paying for their housing. We know that people who utilize SNAP are in like, while it's a temporary program, is because I lost my wages, my wages have been reduced, or I have an ill family member, but I'm also spending 50 to 80% of my income on rent. And if everything else is taken away, SNAP, then I may not make rent payments. So we're really trying to paint a picture of how detrimental it is and how important this program is, really not just for individuals, who is very important so that we can have a strong workforce, but also for municipalities so that they can have a healthy economic outlook. And the last thing I'll say is SNAP has never had a line item budget. Like Medicaid is 1/3% of your state budget, and then follows K-12 education. If Maryland continues the way it is, that the cost share, it just means that the states are going to have to shift money, because there's no additional sort of revenue coming in. If there is, very few states sort of have that. So just flagging all of the concerns that are at SNAP. And so we at FRAC are really trying to paint that picture as to how important it is to continue the program, because of, regardless, the millions of dollars that it brings into your state and other states, and how important it's also from the health and the well-being for individuals, and also for retailers, for businesses, and society as a whole.
Thank you so much, Gina. So there are a couple questions in the chat. For Ricky, Joe Liu from the Capital Area Food Bank asked what can the public sector do to help most with some of the challenges you described? And then piggybacking off of that, another member, Lindsay Doyle, asked if you could talk more about what would be helpful to reduce utility costs, especially with electric and gas. Is it an energy efficiency improvement thing, or what would be most helpful for you?
Well, we have taken advantage of some of those utility programs as far as like when you replace equipment. We've utilized the energy companies in replacing coolers and things like that. We've done it with lights, so we've tried to cut costs the best that we can. Um, so I don't know how we can cut it much farther because the situation, you're dealing with huge energy users in walk-in coolers and walk-in freezers, in older buildings. So we do use natural gas heat, which is probably the most economical heat for us. But the situation with the electric bills and just constantly jumping, that's become a real problem. I mean, a real problem. And we've seen a decline in our EBT sales. I have to agree with Gina. Overall, and these things, these guidelines that are coming in or new requirements have not even taken effect yet, where we're going to see that huge impact. But it's about 30% of our sales, and I would tell you at one time it was probably 40% or more of our sales, of our gross sales, and it is declining. So some of it is based on, like you said, when around the pandemic we had a huge hit because it was great. I mean, it was they had extra money and people spent it, and they, of course, they spent it on food. But I don't know. I don't remember the other question. It was beyond how the public sector can help, I guess, is what you said. I'm not sure. Is that what it was?
Yep, that was it.
How the public sector could help, other than supporting your local small businesses. It's huge. Every dollar counts right now. And there's always been a huge amount, I think, of abuse in SNAP. About 5 years ago, I was kind of really upset when I had a customer come in and bought like $100 worth of filet mignon steaks on his EBT card. And I called the EBT office and I said, "Hey guys, this really bothers me. This customer came in and he bought fillets." But they said, "Oh, you cannot question this person one bit. That is their right. If that's what they choose to spend it on, that's what they can spend it on." And now we're talking about, in these changes coming up, restricting it. So again, you're putting the small retailer in a position to be the food police of whether it's healthy or not. And getting healthy eating is not going to be something, I mean, we can help by having the products available, but this is going to take training on the individuals in the program for them to understand healthy eating. I mean, so many of them are eating meal to meal. I see people come in and they buy stuff for lunch and they'll come back and buy stuff for dinner because they live in a house with multiple people. And I asked them one day, why don't you buy enough stuff for, 1 or 2 meals? And they said, because, the people could steal our food or whatever, So it's a total training of, and making a change of lifestyle to convince them or at least show them this is a healthier way to eat.
If I may add, one of the things I didn't mention and some of the things is just this push around SNAP restrictions, which I think it's what you're talking about. And I think it's important for us not to call it a healthy waiver, because if we call it a healthy waiver, there will be funding associated with individuals. There's plenty of data and research that shows that individuals' biggest obstacle to accessing food is price and location. And food prices right now are 2.7% more than they were this time last year. We do know that, some programs and some states have like double up bucks or like all of those programs. Those programs don't exist without SNAP. And then some of them are partnered by the states. USDA historically has denied applications for restrictions because they have said it themselves. It doesn't work. and we don't know individuals, and I also think it's important, before I even get to the point, we're all American. All of us live in this country, and there's a very different way with the way we address individuals who are falling on hard time and utilize those benefits and everyone else. So I think that really needs to be part of the conversation, because I know if anyone went to our, when we got our paycheck, to say like, hey, what are you buying? And there's a lot of things that play in a way with what people are buying. We don't know the diet needs of what people need to buy, and we don't know if that's all that they can afford, or the judgment that is like, maybe some people just want to be able to eat that. So it's a complex issue, and I think we always live in a country where we want to protect our own choice to be able to eat, but really the biggest obstacle to those things is access and its price. Those waivers, what has not been said is that they carry a cost, an administrative cost. Some states are trying to come up with a budget, those who have gone on that path, but it really is a way to cut benefits even more. From a store perspective, it is a nightmare, because as you just talked about utility, but then one of the main reasons that folks do not join in the WIC program is because of the coding mechanism and the training that has to be done for people to say like, no, those blueberries are okay, but those other blueberries don't count. That sort of coding and that information is really difficult, and that's sort of goes in. And the retailers released a study, I think it was last week. I'm happy to put the link here, but for some of them, it will cost upfront over $1 billion to just implement some of these changes. And where do you think those changes will pass on to? Will pass on to the customers and the food. So it's a very complex, witty issue that on its face will actually create more harm as states are trying to implement everything that just came out of HR 1. And that's where their focus should be in, then, thinking about these policies that at the end of the day, both administrations in the past have said that it doesn't work.
I see where he's coming from with trying to police things. At least with WIC, you don't have to police anything necessarily, because you just have to complain to the state that they didn't. But with the changes, yeah, it could be but you're policing stuff now, but it's just going to get a deeper policing. Is that right? With the new changes that are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I mean, you're going to go now from, you can't have, cleaning supplies or toilet paper or pet food or, things to that nature you can't put on there. And it's always kind of been a rule of thumb. If you can't eat it, it can't go on there to a degree. But now you're going to say, oh, well, we bought those chips forever. I want chips and I want this, because you're going to take some junk food or candy or soda, and really some of these families, that's what they survive off. And like she said, now we're going to tell them how they have to eat to be on this program, and it makes it, in today's society, when you tell somebody no, it's very hard. Especially they say, well, wait a minute, this has been forever, or I can go to such and such store and I can get it. So it does make it very hard on the cashier at the store itself.
Well, I can tell you this, that sometimes there are growing pains, and the same thing happens with WIC. We have to take something off, right? We had to take organics off recently because we just don't have the food funds to support organics. And there was a little bit of a transition period. We had to tell them no, but it does get better. So, I know that's a learning curve for both the stores and the participants per se. But I know you probably don't like to hear it, but eventually, I guess if you had to implement these, it does get better. And there is a transition period, and everybody has to live through it, unfortunately.
Ricky, there's another question in the chat for you from Lisa. She asked if you could describe how you develop the relationships to buy local produce and how you manage that with a small retail establishment.
Well, in the county that we live in, of course, we've been around, like I said, for 88 years. We do have great relationships with a lot of farmers, And, we'll call around when we know certain things become available, such as we're using a lot of local farmers for like a kale right now, collards or greens or whatever being grown right now. And we've got a local orchard. So, most of the time by being in your community or your county or your area, what's available and what's not. And of course, it's going to be much easier to get that. And you want to, we don't want to be a farm store on the side of the road, like a farm setup, but we try to access as much local because we believe in selling and supporting local. I mean, we have local milk, we have local butter, we have local cheeses. So any variety. Our beef is local. It's raised about 40 minutes from here. So no matter what, we do push very hard for local, whether it is in anything that we use.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm opening this up to the committee members as well, but I guess I'm curious, like, what folks think about next steps for like attracting brick and mortar grocery stores to low access areas, healthy food priority areas, like what policies or programs could help improve business viability in light of the many challenges discussed here.
Not only the challenges of just being in business, but also the challenges of shoplifting in certain areas has become huge on people determining whether they want to go into that area. Just because it's created the food does not mean it's going to be a profitable venture for them. And you've seen some national chains even saying, we're going to eliminate that area, or we're going to eliminate, when certain people can be in the store, juveniles can't be in the store after a certain amount of time or at hours, or they have to be accompanied. So, it's nice to say, well, we can build a store here and it's got needs for it, but sometimes the roadblocks, such as the cost involved, but also the problems that you're going to run into being in some of the areas that you're trying to solve the problem in, are overwhelming.
Diana, go ahead.
Annika, that's a very true statement. In fact, there's a lot of places here in Anne Arundel County that has been difficult because of shoplifting, and they've had to close stores in certain areas because of that. I often think that maybe if there was more of a tax incentive, that may help. I'm not sure.
Tax incentive would help, but they've also got, the legislators have to get together and they have to agree that there is a juvenile crime issue, because a lot of these juveniles are being utilized as the front person for people of age, because the juveniles won't be penalized or have problems because they're under the age. So they have to realize there is a true juvenile crime issue in the state of Maryland.
I agree.
Michelle?
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Just a completely unrelated question, and I don't know that the Food System Resiliency Council would ever advocate for this, but has anyone ever studied what the impact on like viability of the marketplace in terms of food retail outlets in these areas would be if they were allowed to sell beer and wine? Like, has anyone looked at whether that would make the profit motive better and what the actual retail impact might be? I know it's been contentious for a few years in the legislature whether or not that's possible, but I don't know if this angle's been looked at in particular.
It would not impact me as personally, because my grandfather never believed in alcohol, so we have never sold alcohol within our business. It's never been a factor. But I do know your major change. Of course, it's against the law in the state of Maryland, and it's been a huge push to make it happen. But the larger beer distributors have been able to always lobby to stay away from that. But I mean, alcohol does mean that it's going to be a little bit higher profit margin in alcohol. It might help some, but I still don't think it solves your initiative to get more food out there, because then I'm afraid that would be driven more of an alcohol store versus a food store like it should be.
Yeah, we've had some stores in the city that were like liquor stores who wanted to become liquor authorized, which was kind of
Maura, I don't know. I'm having a hard time hearing you. I don't know if this is a problem others are having.
No, we can't hear.
have problems with my. You can hear me now? No.
Just very quietly. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I can speak loudly. We've had in the past, we've had liquor stores in the city be authorized as WIC, and it just doesn't work because they have these little one shelf that has WIC stuff, and so it just seems, yeah, that doesn't work for the city. I think it would work for the bigger grocery stores like you see in like other states necessarily. But I don't know if it would necessarily work in maybe some of the medium stores, but not necessarily the mom and pops.
Well, okay, committee members, I'm turning this back to you. What would be the next steps in your opinion? Like what other ideas do we have? So the reason that we ended up having this group is because of some conversations that happened last time regarding like questions around WIC and hearing from actual grocery retailers. Joe, thank you. Let's hear from you.
This is another sort of maybe out of the box idea, but while we're hearing ideas about publicly owned grocery stores, which have a certain kind of political valence that might not be great, but there are also a couple of models I know in Chicago where there's much more public-private partnership, where there might be connected with food banks or food distribution of some basic necessities, and then a food hall type with stalls from different kinds of private vendors. So it's a way to encourage smaller food businesses, as well as provide a facility, a locale for food basics, instead of the whole idea of a, much more of a food hall kind of approach and look that can be a lot more appealing and maybe less scary to some people. And I wonder if we have any models or discussion of that on the table as well.
Joe, I know that there was a co-op, and it sounds like that's what you're talking about, a co-op store in Mount Rainier that was established and has ran, I'm not sure if it's still running, but it was very successful at one time.
Interesting. Mount Rainier is close to us, so maybe I can dig into that and find out a little bit more about it.
Any other thoughts? I know that we're getting closer to time.
I would like to plug this. I mean, if you do propose something, or the panel or the board, or the group, you just have to look just to consider the sustainability. What kind of support long term are you going to provide to these vendors if you were going to offer them some kind of incentives, and if you're planning to include program support from other programs, that you speak with them before promising their work or their support or their need for involvement, specifically WIC. We do have a lot, sometimes we're just like, they put these things out and they're like, oh, WIC, you need to help because we put this in your thing. Well, we knew nothing about it. So when there's some planning surrounding that these key stakeholders are involved and can advise whether they could do that. WIC is a very complicated beast, and there's only certain things that we are required or can do. But also just, in Baltimore City's worked multiple times, like I said, in the Healthy Corner store. So in my experience, it has to be a sustainability. Like what is the sustainability of this program?
Thanks, Maura. Lisa?
I had two questions. I had one question for Maura. When someone signs up for WIC as a vendor, what's the technical assistance or training that's provided for that retailer?
They have to come to new vendor training.
Okay.
And so it's a 2-hour training that is required by the federal regulations. We go and we do an on-site inspection to ensure that they have all the minimum stock. They have their store set up to become WIC authorized. And then we, at that point, speak with them about, expectations, how they could set up their store, and the requirements. And then, once they're authorized, if it's a smaller store and they anticipate leasing equipment from our processor, then after they're authorized by the WIC program, they're referred to our processor to get the equipment. And depending on the access analysis, they either pay or we pay for the machine. And that is also another federal requirement, is that we have to establish participant access determinations, and that's published in COMAR. And so when they do get the equipment, then there's that training aspect as well. The contractor does the training, how to use it, and then we go and we test the machine. And then once we test it, all the connectivity is working, answer any questions with the vendor, and then they're ready to go. And then we have annual training, which is required. They come for another 2-hour training in the summer in August. And then high risk vendors, whenever they're renewed, they have to come to reauthorization training. So again, they're getting training and training and training. So if for some reason we go through a disqualification, they can't say that they didn't know.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I just have one last question for Ricky in regards to, it sounds like your model at your store is that you have a lot of diversification with doing the restaurants, like the school district and stuff. Is that like, I'm not sure the best way to ask this. Like, is that a large portion of your business? I'm just trying to think through if we were working with other small retailers to stay in business or to help them strengthen, is that diversification a key piece? And what would be the best recommendations you'd indicate in regards to that diversification?
Diversification is very key, because I've found it to be, I have it distinctly. I can monitor it every single day throughout the day. And I've got my totals at the end of the month and the end of the year to know that if one is down, then you're able to hope that the other one is up, whether it be on the wholesale side or the lawn and garden or whatever. But if you do not have diversification, I can tell you, you're not going to survive just selling bread, milk, and sodas right now. The incentives that you were speaking of towards the individuals, I would think the only thing you could put out there as an incentive for somebody who is carrying SNAP and is doing the right thing with SNAP would be to give some type of a tax reduction on their business, whether it be real estate tax or whatever. And somebody spoke of the government-run stores. I see Boston is very close, I think, to coming along with that. Also on a side life here, I have over 20 years in county council. I've sat on the county council for 20 years. And I can tell you, I would not want to see government get into go to government run grocery stores, because you have to rely on the entrepreneur himself to be diversified. And I think the government backing would not give them that ability. And again, you're taking taxpayer dollars to try to do something that I think local entrepreneurs can do better than government.
Thank you all so much. Since we are getting close to time, I'm gonna say that we should wrap this up here. Maura, so we are not doing meeting minutes typically for the committees anymore, but the recording will be posted to the council's website. But we can follow up offline if you need additional records. But are there any last updates from anyone on the call that they'd like to share? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much to Ricky and to Maura. Oh, Joe, go ahead.
I apologize. I'm slow on clicking the buttons. I want to make an offer to everybody in the southern part of the state, in the DC metro area. We released our latest hunger report 2 weeks ago, and one to make sure that everybody who might have an interest and might be able to use the data that we have on food insecurity in the DC area knows about it. And please feel free to reach out to me, and be happy to get you unpublished data that we might be able to produce, or any other version or analysis or further detail that you might be interested in, see if we can generate it from the data set that we have. And we are also responding to the federal government shutdown. Obviously, it has a big impact here around DC, but we are doing a number of supplemental distributions through our partners in the region, and we want to get out the word for that. And so I'd be happy to send the logistical information on those supplemental distributions that we're doing for federal workers.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, and if there's anything I can forward to the committee, please let me know too. That's really helpful.
I'll email you, Annika.
Okay, thank you. And Anne Marie, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to share, thanks, Joe, for the segue. Capital Area Food Bank is gracious enough to be joining us next Wednesday, the 22nd, from 1 to 2:30 on our food security community call / advocacy, food system advocacy call to talk about the results of that report, and to particularly focus on Montgomery County as well. So we know some of you all are on our distribution lists and have registered to join us already, but Annika, I will, if you already have the link, feel free to share it out after this, or I'll send it to you.
Cool, I just put it in the chat, so at least those who are still on the call can see.
Thank you, thanks.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I will see some of you at 11 a.m. for Environment in Production.
Thank you, that was great.
All right, thank you.